I am still a grateful alcoholic. I have been through this process as it's laid out in the big book. With the help of a big book step study sponsor, my higher power, I have made my amends and I do practice 10, 11, and 12 on a daily basis. Thanks, Eric, for reaching out and asking me to speak. It is always a honor to speak at a big book step study meeting, mostly because when I speak at a big book step study meeting, it's because I actually have completed the work and I do have something to share. And it is an honor. Um, so how I got to step 4. First, um, understanding that I was an alcoholic. And at the very first meeting I had ever been to of Alcoholics Anonymous, I heard a speaker say that when he what made him an alcoholic was when he picked up a drink, he didn't put down until he passed out. And that was me. So from that time on, I knew that I was an alcoholic. Um, I it took me a really long time to get the second part of step 1, but I knew that I was an alcoholic. Um, I the and when I was finally able to surrender enough to be willing to do this work, um, I had to have somebody explain what unmanageability meant. And because I didn't really think that my life was unmanageable. I had a job, um, I had a very good job. I owned my own business. Um, I really didn't think my life was unmanageable. But my sponsor asked me if I had ever been homeless, and I spent most of my adult life homeless, and I chose to be homeless. It was either much easier for me than dealing with confrontation, I guess. Um, and asked me if I had a driver's license, and I hadn't had a driver's license in a very long time. Um, and but I owned a doggy um walking business and relied on my vehicle and my license to do my job. And so he explained how that was unmanageability. And um step 2 for me was I only had to be willing to believe that there was something bigger than me that could restore me to sanity. And um I grew up in a Catholic home and I was not into this. Um I was not into believing that God could do anything for me. But my sponsor talked to me about I only had to be willing to believe that there was something bigger than me. It didn't need to be the God that I grew up with. It didn't need to be the God that he believed in. It didn't need to be the God that my parents believed in. It only needed to be something bigger than me. And I knew that there was something bigger than me. I knew that there was something that made the trees and something that made the world go round and that made the sun come up and made the moon come up. And I knew all of that, made the tide come in and go out. And I believed in all of those things. And he said that if I could just be willing to believe that there was something bigger than me that could restore me to sanity, then I was at step 2. And I could believe in that. Um, Step 3 was really making a decision that I turn my life over to the care of this higher power that I didn't really know I believed in as of yet. And I wanted that. I wanted to make a decision to finish this work, to turn my will and my life over to the care of a God that I didn't really understand yet. And he also told me that when I took my step 3, that also said that when I finished this work that I would take another woman through this process, and asked me if I was willing to do that, and I said that I was. So that brought me to step 4. So I started writing my resentments, and writing the resentments wasn't really that difficult for me. I knew that all of the people in my life that had made me angry, that had done me wrong, I knew who they were. I knew what they where they were and what they had done. I was pretty aware of all of that. I had grown up in a house that was very abusive. Um and I had a lot of resentment for the way that my life had started out in my life, and so writing my list and working and seeing where I had been selfish was kind of tough for me. Um, but because I guess it was kind of tough for me because um through my whole life, I had been in a lot of therapy for the abuse I had suffered, and in therapy they told me that none of that was my fault, that I wasn't to blame for any of it. And so now I come into AA and I'm going through this 4 step, and they're telling me that there's a part of this that's my fault. And I'm like, oh, no, no, no. You need to talk to my therapist. This is not my fault. Like, I didn't do this. But I had set the ball rolling. I had put myself in a lot of these situations, and I had to look at that. I had to look and see where I had been selfish and what I had done. And that was a whole new thing for me. It was really looking through the world and with a new pair of glasses. And it was very eye-opening. Um and then it took me probably about um almost 6 months to write the first part of the 4 step. And so I finish 4.1, and I'm all excited, and feeling awesome because I finally finished it and excited. And then I go and I bring my notebook to my sponsor, and he's like, okay, now it's time to write the fear inventory. And man, was I mad. I am not writing all that again. I am not doing this. And he's like, no, no, it's not that bad. It's not that bad. Well, I believe that when I was born, I was I came right out of the womb full of fear. And the only emotion that was ever allowed to grow in my life was fear. Um, I didn't really understand love. I didn't understand compassion. I didn't understand much as a child, but I understood fear. And my father, especially, he wanted that fear to grow. It was how he controlled me. He was how he controlled my mother, my sister, the animals and that lived with us. And so I wasn't exactly sure how to get rid of all of that fear. I wasn't exactly sure how to um even really understand, like, how to function without all that fear. And my instructions were to um go back through my resentment inventory, and at the bottom of each of my resentment, it I had to write what the fear was that was in addition to each of my resentments. And I listed them all, and it was pretty incredible. When we started this together, my sponsor asked me if I was afraid of anything. And the only thing that I thought I was afraid of was that my father would kill me. And um he had asked me at that time when the last time I saw my father was. And I told him that it was probably about 25 years prior. And he asked me where he lived, and I told him, and he said, so that's probably not an accurate fear. It's not something that is actual. He's probably not going to kill you today. And because I hadn't even seen him in over 25 years. And so going into this, I really thought that that was the only thing that I was really afraid of. And I was really blown away at what my actual fears were. Um, I had the big one that when I wrote all of them out was not being enough, not being loved, and being alone. Those were the biggest three. And I was really surprised at that, like I didn't think that those really affected me at all. But they really, in this reading that we just read, it said that fear is the evil and corroding thread, and it goes through in everything that we are. We have fear everywhere in our life. And I realized that in those three fears, they went back to early childhood, and I could pinpoint when the earliest time that I felt each of those. And then we went on to the next thing, and I had to answer these three questions for each of my fears. And the first question is, what am I selfishly getting out of my fear? What is it like relying on self? And what is it like relying on God? And it was kind of hard for me to wrap my head around what am I selfishly getting out of my fear, because I didn't think that it was a selfish thing at all. But it was explained to me that as an alcoholic, I don't do anything unless I get something out of it. So if it doesn't work, I do not do it. But if it works, then I continue to do it. So I am getting something out of it in order to have this fear. And that was very eye-opening for me. It was very healing for me. I grew a lot, and my eyes really opened with some of that. Um some of those what am I selfishly getting out of my fear? Some of those answers were, I want things to be easier for me in with disregard for anyone else. That was a big one. That happened over and over and over again. Um, what is it like relying on self? When I rely on self, it's usually a shit show. When I rely on God, it's usually peace and serenity. And it's that simple. And it was kind of comical to me that it was that simple. And I had no idea that it was that simple. No idea. Like, I had no idea that by me being me and by me running the show, that I was running this shit show, and causing chaos with everybody and everything that was around me. And by not trusting and relying on God, it it was just chaos, literal chaos in my life. And it was incredible. And when I had to write over and over and over and over again, what is it like relying on God? And the answer was always peace, calmness, serenity. Like, that was huge. And This was the part of the inventory that I really started to feel my relationship with my higher power start to develop. Um, Up until this point, I had had 11 years of sobriety when I did the work through Big Book Step Study. I never prayed until this point. I um didn't meditate. Like, I had no concept of what it was like to have a relationship with a higher power. I didn't know that was possible. I really didn't. And there was always something missing in sobriety for me. And when I got to this part of my inventory, I started to get a relationship with my higher power. I still wasn't overly clear about what my higher power looked like or what it was or what it wasn't. But in the resentment inventory, it said that God is everything or God is nothing. And I started to kind of believe that. And in my fourth step, I was having to say the third step prayer literally probably 20 times a day every time I picked up my pen. And so that was also building my relationship with a higher power. And after I did my fourth step and when I did my fifth step, I will tell you, and this is the honest to God truth, I'm somebody that was probably 90% filled with fear before I did this work at 11 years sober. Today, I sit here 3 years later and I probably have maybe 2% fear, and the rest, I just am filled with peace because I did this work. And that's what this work does. So if you're writing, if you're thinking about writing, if you're reading and you don't think it's ever going to end, like, just keep going because the miracle is about to happen. That's all I got.